Good evening. Today is November 15, 2021, and this is the 73rd episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. My guest today is my good friend, Michael Yon. Michael is the America's most experienced living combat correspondent who is coming to us today from the southern border area, where he has been covering the migration surge and also the human tragedy on the south of the U.S. border. No other writer has also spent as much time with combat troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Michael's dispatches from the front lines have earned him the reputation of the premier independent combat writer of his generation. But before we begin talking to Mike about the southern border and the human tragedy that is affecting us, let's take a look at some of the work he has done.
So this is it. This is storming the castle. Some drama's going on down here. We need the oil. Look at the squeaking armor from the police. They don't have their mask.
Michael, it's good to have you here. It seems that, as you see in the video, when you were over there covering the Chinese Communist Party's assault basically on its neighbors, seems like the Chinese information operations has finally been able to develop its network to where it can now have effects on our southern border, and a lot of the stuff that is being pushed from the southern border coming here, a lot of it does have ties to the Chinese Communist Party trying to influence U.S. Across the board. Unfortunately, some of our congressmen seem to have been bought into the whole process. But it's good to have you here, buddy. I wanted to know what's the update on the southern border and what's your take on it.
It's great to be back on. I've been running up and down the Texas border recently. Of course, this year I've been through Texas numerous times. Tonight I'm in McAllen, Texas. And more recently, I've been in Roma and Eagle Pass and Del Rio and Brownsville, all over the place, and also in Mexico and all the way down to Tapachula, which is the southernmost city in Mexico in Chiapas state, as well as down in Colombia and Panama and the Darien Gap. I spent 2 or 3 months in Darien Gap this year, which is pretty serious. About roughly 10% of the migrants die who are going through there. We don't actually know the numbers because we don't know how many go through, who enter, and we don't know how many actually come out. So the guesstimate of 10% is just based on many, many interviews, asking how many they went in with, how many people they saw die, that sort of thing. And so it looks like about 10%. Let's put it this way. It's not 1%. It's many people get lost and are never seen again. Other people right now will be stuck in the Darien Gap, and they literally starve to death out there because they can't go forward and they can't come back. Some people are just too injured. It's more than 60 miles of some of the toughest jungle in the world. And so I've also been this year in Africa tracking weaponization of migration, specifically in Morocco and also in Greece and Bulgaria. And recently I was in Lithuania tracking the Belarusian, the dictator Lukashenko is weaponizing migrants. And over in Greece, it's actually in the EU, it's Turkey doing it. Erdogan, the dictator, is pushing migrants through there. And then down in Morocco is a great ally of the United States. So I don't want to badmouth our great ally. They were the country who originally actually the first country to recognize the United States back in the 1700s. So I have a lot of respect for Moroccans. We get along very well. They have a reason why they're weaponizing the migrants. For instance, there's the Polisario separatist movement down south in the Western Sahara, South Morocco, which is, not just Al-Qaeda linked, but it's blood brothers there. And so Spain has allowed some of the Al-Qaeda people to come to Spain. Morocco said, you can't do that. They're killing Moroccans and that sort of thing. And actually, President Trump, very wisely sided with our old allies, Morocco, against Al Qaeda. And so, this is the normal quagmire of politics. But the bottom line is, Morocco finally said, well, if you're just going to, let in selectively Al Qaeda related terrorists, here, we'll take 9,000 more. Yep. And so they allowed 9,000 people. A lot of people don't know this, but there's two European cities in Morocco. Those are two Spanish cities called Melilla and Ceuta. So I was on the border of Ceuta. So those are actually two Spanish cities, EU cities, European Union cities in Africa. So this causes its own little frictions that most people don't see. They've got a wall around them. They're right on the Mediterranean Sea. And so anyway, that's why that weaponization has gone on. There is a real political fight going on. Then if we go to Erdogan in Turkey, well, we know he's sort of a madman there, not sort of. I mean, I'm used to saying that, almost flippantly, but we know he's a dictator. And so he's also weaponized migrants by pushing them into Europe for various reasons to hold a gun to their head to get money and that sort of thing. Now let's move over to Lithuania and Poland. Belarus is on their border. Belarus, the dictator is Lukashenko. And earlier this year, you might recall, Lukashenko forced down an airliner. There was somebody aboard the airliner that he wanted to arrest. And so they faked a bomb scare and sent up a MiG and forced the airliner passenger jet down into Minsk, which is the capital of Belarus. And the EU, of course, naturally said, what are you doing? You just sent up a fighter jet and faked a bomb scare to make this aircraft land and then arrested somebody on the aircraft. So Lithuania and Poland and the rest, they all said, foul ball. You're not even the president of Belarus. You stole the election. Sounds familiar. And he said, okay, listen, you don't like it? I am the president of Belarus. And he said, I'll just flood your borders with migrants and radioactive materials and drugs. And now he's made good on the drugs and migrants. And there is he's got a nuclear power plant there called Ostrovec, which you can see it from Lithuania. It's that close. And so whether or not he's actually flooded in radioactive material is unknown to me. But I did fly from Morocco down in Africa up to Lithuania. Luckily, I had been in Afghanistan with the Lithuanian army, and I had kept my contacts vibrant. And I got right off the airplane with Chuck Holton, war correspondent friend, and we went straight into a meeting with the vice deputy or the deputy prime foreign minister, and then met with intelligence people and police and army, and I spent 3 weeks there actually. So I learned quite a bit. Now you see Belarus is pushing more not troops, but if you want to call them troops, weaponized migrants. Many are from Syria, Iraq. Most of the rest are from Africa. Although I met 6 from Chechnya, and I talked with them actually. And they keep the Chechens separate. They say once you got 6 or more Chechens, they reach critical mass and they get kind of violent. So, I mean, they've got those issues now. Meanwhile, I came back to the United States and actually I went back to Panama, took some people back out into Darien Gap and came back up to the United States. Now I'm in Texas. So I'm watching this dynamic all over the world, the weaponization of migration. And, when you're doing work correspondent work, which as you know, and I've done many years out there in the firefights and the bombings and the suicide bombings, that's like junior high and high school level war correspondent stuff. When you're going to get into the higher level of what's going on, you have to study famines. You have to study pandemics. You have to study migration. And the tip top of everything is information war. You have to, if you want to get to the PhD level to where you're a really valuable war correspondent, you have to study the kinetics, just getting out into shootouts and learning how things work on that level. You have to study famine because pandemic, famine, war, PANFAWAR, pandemic, famine, war, they always go together. If you get a big war, you're going to have if it's a big war, you're going to have famine and you're going to have pandemic. If you get a really big pandemic, you will get famine and war. It's like a triangle of death. And so, it's funny. I've been saying that for years. And finally somebody said, it's in the Bible. And I said, it is. They knew it 2,000 years ago. So, I'm acting like I invented something new. I didn't. They knew it 2,000 years ago. The 4 horsemen. And so, so these things are nothing new. And that's why in January of 2020, as you know, I think I was on your show in that month. And that was when I was warning, January of 2020, not 2021.
Yep.
I was warning Steve Bannon called me up in January, and he's like, "Do you think that there's a pandemic unfolding?" And I was, because I was in Hong Kong, and I said, "Well, I'm not a virologist, but I'm wearing a mask." So I was one of the first people to mask up, and I was one of the first people to take it off. And so, but back then, I thought the smart thing to do was to wear a mask. Now I'm not sure if my judgment on that was very good. But actually, if we have another pandemic like this, I'm going to mask up again. But not to go into that. But the bottom line is, back then in January of 2020, I started telling people, stock up now, stock up on food, be prepared for restaurants to close. These are on my live streams. You can still see them. I was Jordan Harbinger show. I was saying, look, you could have transportation closed down, your lights could go out, your water could go out, which luckily hasn't happened on any big scale at all, but it could. And now, as we get into 2022, will be creeping up on us soon. We can clearly see those food shortages and those sorts of things are starting to creep up on us. And the prices are going up. Monetary inflation is going up. Energy prices are going up. When energy prices go up, everything goes up. Anyway, so thinking about this: war, pandemic, famine, migration, and information war. If you really want to study and be a serious war correspondent, you got to do all those things. So I've been spending years doing that, and now I'm looking at migrants again, and I'm finding all kinds of stuff on our border, like this baby. Found this card maybe 5 days ago. This is an ID card we just found on the border at the Rio Grande River. I'll try to hold it still. You can screenshot it, and maybe, where is this baby? We found this card by the river. You can screenshot it, and I'll try to make it so that it's easy for somebody to read it. Hopefully it's not blurry. So we find all kinds of cards like this. We find Haitians, for instance. I've been down in the Darien Gap in Panama looking, talking with Haitians. Many of them go to Chile first. So there's human osmotic pressure, right? Human osmotic pressure is the push and the pull factor. The pull factor is, hey, we're going to give you free stuff if you come to America. The push factor would be wars, pandemics, that sort of thing. So these sorts of cards, notice this is Chile. It's a Haitian that was in Chile. Another Haitian that was in Chile. And another Haitian that was in Chile. Or that is not a Haitian. That's somebody else. Where's he from? I can't read it. But many of the Haitians are from Chile. I dropped one of the cards here. And where's this one from? We pick these things up. We pick these things up all over the border. I mean, there's thousands of these ID cards. They throw them out when they're leaving Mexico. I was down in Mexico about 5 days ago, I would say, and picking up all these cards. Like, look at this guy. He's got 5 different ID cards here. Same guy. And look, it's got the UN thing up here. I'll hold it still so you can screenshot it. So if anybody wants to, do their own research, these cards are everywhere, thousands of them. And that's the baby. I wonder what happened to this baby. It's such a cute baby. They're using babies as passports. Okay, same guy, different ID, right? Screenshot it. Same guy, different ID. Screenshot it. Did I already show this one? I got 4 or 5 from this one guy. Anyway, I might have shown that one already, but you can screenshot it and see. And we find all these declarations of immigration, and I hope I'm holding that up right. There's just thousands of these on the ground. And of course, they quickly are washed away and blown away and that sort of thing. So, and I saw on Fox News, somebody sent me a link today to some Fox article or Fox story where they were showing that they give away packets to show people where to go. Well, I first started reporting that with Chuck Colton and Masako Ganaha. I think you know both of them, earlier this year, because we were down there seeing it ourselves. I just found this one in Mexico about 4 or 5 days ago. And here's a packet. See, it's like a nice plastic packet. Here, let me hold it still so anybody, viewers, can screenshot it. I hope they can see it. Here, I'll try to hold it so you can, it's kind of difficult. Here, just screenshot it and turn it sideways later. But if you want to, see what these things say, you can see. And they're handing these things out. The NRC, the Norwegian Refugee Council, the OIM, the International Organization for Migration, or it's IOM, depending on the language. They're down there helping people. I see Norwegian. When I was over in Lithuania, and their people were asking me, what do I think comes next? Because the Lithuanian intelligence guys and everything, they know I track this around the world. And of course, I can provide them my perspective, and they're a good ally of the United States. I said, well, first of all, you're going to see NRC show up, which is Norwegian Refugee Council, and they did. You're going to see IOM or OIM, depending language, show up, and they did. You're going to see all kinds of Red Cross and all these things that say that they're just there for humanitarian reasons, but what they end up doing is being facilitators. Now, speaking of facilitators, I'm in Texas, and I've been on the border, and the Texas National Guard has been deployed by Governor Abbot. And Governor Abbott, looking from afar, I was led to believe that Governor Abbott is, really putting the screws to close the border. And it's not happening. As a war correspondent, I don't like bullshit. And the thing I saw immediately when I came down here, I made that video. That video you're showing, I made that in Mexico. In fact, I made that right where I found some of these ID cards I just showed you. So that was in Acuna, Mexico, across from Del Rio. And they were walking across right there into the arms of Texas National Guard. When those migrants in the water right there, when they get to the other side, National Guard picks them up. And now when I go over to the other side and try to video, National Guard's like, hey, you got to get out of here, and this sort of thing. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Why are you trying to cover up, for what's going on here? And so what they do is the National Guard turns them over to Border Patrol, and who release most of them in the United States, fly them all over the place. And so the Texas National Guard aren't stopping anything. The wall that they talk about putting up is nothing. It's nothing. It's a chain link fence in some places. In other places, it's concertina wire, one strand. And then in the really thick places, it's 3 strands, which is going to take you all like 5 minutes to get through with wire cutters or a blanket to throw over it. And so they put these containers down. They say that's going to be their wall, but they're not working because they don't have enough containers. And bottom line, the Texas National Guard is clearly helping to facilitate getting people in. They're not stopping them. They're not pushing them back. They're not saying no entry. And I understand if they got babies and that sort of thing, we should be taking them and putting them in detention and finding their homes and sending them back unless there's some serious problem with the baby. But one of the things I've seen in Panama and Colombia and Mexico and Texas is that people are using babies who may or may not be kidnapped. We don't know, but we're not even doing DNA tests. We know that babies are being kidnapped. We know for a fact that babies are being sex trafficked, and nobody's checking. So basically, we've got our own U.S. government, including Texas National Guard. And for instance, when I was just in Eagle Pass, Texas, the local police, Eagle Pass police, were threatening to arrest us when we were on public property for filming Texas National Guard, just out there, engaging with you can see the video. It's on my locals page. Go to locals.com and look at the Eagle Pass police officer wearing a mask and sunglasses. Like, why are you wearing like a cartel mask when you're in a police uniform and coming up and threatening us while we sit in a car in a public parking lot? We're literally sitting in the car. I was there with Auden Cabellos. He's an American correspondent who lives actually in Acuna, Mexico. And I was there with Masako Ganaho, whom the Japanese correspondent. So all 3 of us were in the car. Mm-hmm. Policeman comes up, all aggressive, while we're sitting in the car. And I've got the video running, and I put it on locals. But that's the kind of, why are the police and for instance, the DPS, Department of Public Safety of Texas, one of those guys was out at a different situation on the same, about 500 meters away the day before. And he was also telling us to get out, and it's private property. And he was telling us not to film. Why not film? He said, don't film them because they're going to change clothes here. I'm like, huh? It's like, they see all these clothes on the ground in that video you're showing? That's exactly where it was. That's where he told us not to film. And there's just thousands of pairs of shoes, because when they come across the river, Rio Grande, the big river, when they come across the river, they're all wet, soaking wet. And so they don't want to walk into town soaking wet. So they bring clothes across in plastic bags and they change right there. So there's thousands of pairs of shoes and clothes. That's where the term actually wetback came from. A lot of people don't know that. And Mexicans used to call other Mexicans that came across the river wetbacks. Now it's considered that's a coyote right there. There's two coyotes in the water. And I'm right there beside Texas Department of Public Safety. And right, I mean, like meters away, right? And so here they are. They're saying thank you to Border Patrol who are helping migrants get up over this cliff area. So our National Guard are down and deep and also the Border Patrol are helping the migrants get up this little cliff area. When I'm just like, why are you helping? Push them back across the river. It's safe over there. It's completely safe over on the Mexican side. This isn't Cartelville. There are other places that are dangerous, but not this one. And again, a lot of these people, like these Haitians, a lot of them live in Chile for many years. One Haitian family we met up with in Colombia and tracked them through Panama and finally flew up to see them in Mexico. They're now in New Jersey. The mother had lived in Chile for 4 years. And so when Biden they didn't have to run. There was no war to run from. They just that's the guy right there in the black shirt that was saying, don't film and that sort of thing. That's him. Yeah. DPS guy, Department of Public Safety. And so, and you can hear it because I've captured his audio and I think I put that up completely uncut, I believe. Because the only reason I would cut it sometimes is because people don't want to watch a long video, but I like to put up just completely uncut videos. Here they are coming up. So they're soaking wet. And that, again, that's why Mexicans used to call other Mexicans wetbacks, because they come up wet and then they have to change clothes or they'll be walking into town. There's a golf course not far from here, about, I don't know, maybe 1 kilometer away or 2 kilometers. And so you walk, here he is, telling me to get back. Why? I mean, what are we doing? What threat are we, right? Now, they don't search any of these guys. Many of them, they've caught armed with firearms, knives, drugs. They have kidnapped children. They didn't search any of these people at all. And they don't search their bags. They don't handcuff them. But we're the bad guy with the camera, right? We're the bad guy. What does that tell you? From my many years of covering the military and others, police in different places, whether it's Hong Kong, Iraq, Afghanistan, Nepal, Thailand, anytime they act like this, they are always covering something up. Always. Every time. Otherwise, they are happy to let you see. Happy to see they're doing their job. But no. So what are they doing? They tell us, hey, this is private property. You got to get out of here. But guess what? We went and saw the owner of the property, and he gave us permission to be there. And so we weren't trespassing or anything like that. And anyway, bottom line is Texas law enforcement, I know a lot of Texans in law enforcement and the National Guard do want to shut it down, obviously, but it's not happening. It is simply not happening. And I'm not the only one seeing it. Masako Ganaha has seen it. Auden Cabellos has seen it. Fox News has seen it. People are seeing it every day and night. They're out there with cameras. Don't want us around.
No, look, Mike, you covered a lot of it there, but
are you there?
Reality is, yeah, I'm here, buddy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mike, can you hear me? Yeah, look, I know you covered a lot there, but it's important for people to know how the whole process moves. In 2015, when I had my first anniversary of our company that I established on September 11th of 2014, I actually wrote the article looking at how Turkey was using migrants as a weapon. Now it's become more sophisticated because now they're making money off of it. Look, a lot of these NGOs you talked about are getting grants and money in California. Even Catholic Charities is getting money. There's some Jewish charities are getting money. Yeah. But if you say anything against them, as one of the representatives from Texas says so, they're going to say either you're anti-Catholic or you're anti-Semite. But all these NGOs are making a profit. It's a money-making process for them. The coyotes are making money. The cartel is making money. And what are the parties that are allowing these individuals to come in? they're getting their next voting base. Nobody cares about what's going to happen to the country in the long run, regardless of
Yeah.
who comes in. And when I was in Kenya recently, we knew that you had a migration path that was coming in, going across, and actually making it into the U.S. southern border and into the U.S. heartland. But it seems like everybody cares about their paycheck more than they care about protecting the nation. So it is what it is.
They've got a long-term game.
Mike,
I
you there,
call it the
buddy?
beast. It's an amalgam of groups: communist, fascist, different. I'm here. I'm here. I hear you. I'm here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right here. I'll send you. Yeah, it's an amalgam of groups. Communist, fascist, just opportunist. People just making money as well, whether it's on drugs or different things. And they don't care about destroying the United States. Of course, some of them would like to. CCP, Russia. It's a multiplayer game. When people say, "Oh, it's China," I'm like, "Yeah, it's a little bit China. It's a lot China. It's a little bit Russia. Russia's been doing these things for generations." But it's not all Russia. It's not all China. It's not all the cartels. It's not all about oil or something. You know what I mean? There are these labels that people put on things that, they can withstand a little bit of scrutiny. Like, how many times, in Afghanistan, do you hear people like, "You're just there for oil"? And I'm like, I'm here in Afghanistan and I don't see any oil wells, right? So, I mean, they'll just throw these labels out, and hope something sticks with ignorant people. But the bottom line is it's a multiplayer game. There's a lot of people involved. Some people just want the votes. That's clear. With apportionment, you can get huge amounts of migrants in different places, and then the census will give you more power in elections and representation. Some of them, would get the votes, and also, as some people I think rightly point out, they call it the browning of America. They're trying to get in people that are not part of our culture, and we have a very diverse culture already. But later on, once they've replaced and supplanted the real resistance, which is people like us, then there's other people that are easier to manipulate. Like a lot of these people coming in from Honduras or Haiti and these other sorts of places, they have no idea what the Constitution even is. I mean, that's just like what's that? You know what I mean? They don't have any idea. They'll be easy to bowl over. They'll be easy to hit with information war. You can issue them these phones, and you can get anything you want with the proper information campaigns. Again, the highest form of warfare is information warfare. And what we're talking about here, the weaponization of migration, it's a weapon it's like a stick. How many ways can you use a stick as a weapon? A lot. You know what I mean? Like 1,000 ways, right? And it's the same with information war. It can be used in so many different ways. It can, like these phones and things that can be tracked, not only tracked, but, oh Lord, they can really get what they want. Now we're going to see now fighting is probably going to break out again soon in the United States due to things that we see in the news, Kenosha or whatever. These are, I don't want to talk about sparks because amateurs always talk about sparks. What'll be the spark that causes this, whatever. It's not about sparks. It's about conditions, right? As a military professional, it's about, amateurs talk tactics and professionals talk logistics, right? And likewise, when it comes to civil war, revolutions, it's about conditions. And one of the biggest ways to create these conditions is through information campaigns that delegitimize the government. For instance, delegitimize the justice system. For instance, as you see with the trial in Kenosha, it's not about rights. It's not about justice. It's not about any of that. It's about the communists and the fascists, working in tandem. They always fight each other as well. They want to delegitimize our entire government. And it's working because now you've got people from a broad spectrum that no longer trust the military. Look, who trusts Milley? Who trusts Austin? Who trusts the generals who left people behind in Afghanistan, who left the Syrians behind, who left so many others behind? Who trusts them? I don't, and so, and you and I are both veterans of the military. And, and I think a lot of huge numbers of veterans no longer trust the military. I get flooded every day with both veterans and people still on active duty or in the Guard or reserves that are just like, look what they're doing here. Look what they're doing here. And they're delegitimizing the military. They're the real studs. They're trying to push them out, and they're replacing them with people that have very left-wing leanings, or leanings might not be the right term. They are clearly communist and fascist, right? Openly. We've got, for instance,
Mike,
another form of information war and delegitimization is, yeah, they're not left-leaning. They're just left. I gotta be honest
with you. Some of them are just incompetent.
And the delegitimization,
they're left, but they're incompetent.
No, there's that. There's that too. There's that too. There's that too. And you know,
I'll give you an example.
For instance, the delegitimization and the. Go ahead.
Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead. We're a little bit behind. Go ahead. You got the floor.
We're breaking up. Okay. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yeah, the delegitimization, for instance, of the military happens in many forms. For instance, in saying that women should be infantrymen. Well, anybody who's done much infantry combat knows that is just pure, utter bullshit, period. There's no way around it. That's like saying women should be professional football. The ultimate sport in the world is infantry combat. It's a blood sport. Body parts everywhere. Seen it many times. You need men out there doing that. Now, I've been on a lot of combat missions when women were out there, and it's not about courage. It's about just ability to do stuff. And, and aggression does count. I've never been out with women in combat when they're like, man, I can't wait to track down some Taliban today. No, they're not like that at all. You got the young studs that are like 22 years old, like, man, I haven't got into contact in 10 days. I want to get into a firefight tonight. You know, I mean, that's the kind of aggression that you need. And you need to have young men like that. You have to keep a chain on, actually, right? That's your real fighters. Yeah. That's the backbone of a fighting force. Not, the things that I've seen out there. It's not about courage, and it's not about competence. Women pilots are just as good as men, I'm told. By men pilots, they're like, the women can do it just as well as we can. But that's pilot stuff, combat pilots, whether it's Kiowa Warriors, which we sold off those helicopters, but you know what I'm getting to. And so, sending women into infantry or now Ranger school, and then you have these, they get all these experienced military people who will sign off for them and go, yeah, well, they made it through, honestly. And I'm like, bullshit. You've been compromised. I know they didn't. I know the special forces training I went through, you would be lucky to find 1 in a million women that are going to make it through that without having damaged their body. Many of the men come out with broken legs. They don't make it either. I mean, it's serious stuff. I don't know what it's like now, but the classes I went through, well, I'm not sure too many women are going to make it, because a lot of it does have to do with just the ability to carry stuff, the ability to and be dirty a lot. Often you don't take a bath for long periods of time. It's just not a place for women, period. But they know that once they get women into the Rangers and they get them into, we're going to have women SEALs or this sort of thing, it's ridiculous. But these are things that delegitimize and weaken the military. And people are out there, left wingers like, oh no, he's saying this, he's a sexist. You know what? I say go to hell. I've been saying that to people more and more when they say, oh, you don't like Catholics. I'm like, you know what? Guess what? If the Pope is doing something that's causing friction between Korea and Japan, which he is, he can go to hell too. I mean, the Pope is clearly in China's pocket. And if Catholics don't like that, they should take it up with their Pope, because that Pope can go to hell. Many of my friends are Catholics, and and it's not against Catholics to say this, but the Catholic charities that you talked about in Mexico, they're real. I went down there with Chuck Holton. We went to one, and it's clear that they're running an operation down there. They're making money, hand over fist, right? And so it's just you just got to stand up to them. All the purple-haired, tackle box face, Antifas. Stand up to them. Don't give them any room. When I'm talking with law enforcement down here about why isn't there a big Antifa uprising in Texas, somebody told me recently. He said because they tried that in Austin, and we stood up to them, we manned up to them, and they backed down. I'm like, that's what they do. I was up in Portland watching those guys. The only reason that they exist in Portland is because left-wing idiots have let them take over the downtown. They've let them take over big parts of Oregon, right? And Seattle as well, up in Washington State. I've been up there as well. I was with Antifa in Washington, D.C., and Atlanta and Philadelphia. The only reason they exist and are able to burn stuff down with BLM is because people let them do it. They start trying that stuff in Florida, they're going to get lit up, right? I mean, you can't just come burn people's homes and businesses down in Florida and Texas. They won't let you do it. You know, you're going to meet some resistance. And if the police won't do it, the people will, and they have the right to do it. And this is the weakness that the communists and the fascists depend on, is men who have been de-testosteroned, let's put it something like that. The ones that are like, oh yeah, women should be in the infantry too. I'm like, listen, you obviously were never in the infantry. You obviously were never in combat. And it's like, you know, you'll get some guys that'll say, well, I was in infantry, and, you know, I believe one artillery officer was telling me, he was telling me how women could do just as well in artillery as men could. And he was an artillery officer, and, you know, he knows. And I'm like, bullshit. I've been on a lot of fire missions with artillery there. Ain't no way women can load those cannons that fast. You know how heavy those rounds are? You do. This takes brawn strength, and speed does count. How many rounds can you get down range? How fast makes a huge difference. It's a survival, life and death thing. It's just a sport, like the gym. We got to get that in there. We got to feed the coal into the furnace, and you know, even dropping mortars, you know, 4-deuce mortars, and, you know, those things are heavy, you know, and how fast you can drop those down the tube, lugging the machine gun. Machine guns don't get lighter because you're a woman. The ammunition doesn't get lighter because you're a woman. You know what I mean? They're like, well, you know, the strong men can carry those. Hello. What about casualties, right? You know, every time you see, you know, casualties and you got to carry them fast and you're under fire and that sort of thing, makes a huge difference. But we got too many men are backing down, and they're not standing up. They're not just telling Antifa and all these left wingers, go to hell. You can call me a racist. You can call me a sexist, whatever. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do and stay out of my way, right? You know, and we've got to fight back. We are going into a real civil war. People that can't see this, more and more people can see it now, but people that can't see it now will see it soon. Because as this PANFAWAR unfolds, pandemic, famine, war, now we're going into a serious food shortage. We've already got food shortages unfolding in different parts of the world. China. Guess what happens when China has a food shortage? A lot of people say, it doesn't matter. I don't eat bananas, or I don't eat rice. Guess what? When they don't have enough rice, they start eating stuff you eat, like fish. And so the Chinese send their fishing trawlers all over the world already, fishing in international waters from Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, India. You know, Indonesia has been blowing up their fishing boats. And so how many has Indonesia blown up? 100? It's quite a few. I mean, that's directionally accurate. It's not like 10. It's and it's not like 1,000, but it's, let's say, in the 100 range. Yeah. And so, I mean, the thing is once when our economy implodes, they're not. And the problem is, once you get food shortages, I mean, real food shortages, not the real people starving. Now you get that migration thing going, right? And then you get pandemics and famine and war. They all go together. And so, you know, the things that we're facing, and especially in 2022 and by 2023, fertilizer prices are going up dramatically. And so many people are saying that they're not going to be planting, or they're going to be planting different crops next year because of fertilizer prices, fuel prices going up. When fuel prices go up, everything goes up. And so meanwhile, we've got these, I'm not going to say it's Biden, because we all know Biden is he doesn't even know where he's at. He doesn't even know how many scoops of what kind of ice cream he wants. You know, Biden is not the president. Somebody else is. It's clearly not Harris. And they're clearly doing things to bring us into massive crisis and to cause a revolution. For instance, shutting off pipeline, we had fuel independence for a while. We had food security. We are still exporting food hand over fist. We should be conserving this food and stockpiling it right now. That's why I've been warning people since January of 2020. Stock up. If you're not stocking up now, you are wrong. You're making a huge mistake. Everything that you buy now is on sale. If you started buying it when I started warning about this in January, February, March of 2020, you would have saved a lot of money. But if you keep waiting one more year, good luck to you. There's no telling how much it's going to cost. It's not like all the food will suddenly vanish, but when suddenly 40 or 50 or 60% of your paycheck is going towards food and you're not getting the kind of food you want, for those of us who spent a lot of time in communist countries, that would be me, and quite a few 2 years in Poland. I was in Czechoslovakia when it was still Czechoslovakia, Hungary. I was in Romania, China. I was in many of these places, right? And I'm telling you, when this stuff happens, it'll happen very quickly. Hyperinflation can come. Last year, early in 2020, I was saying, if you got a whole bunch of coins, go ahead and cash them in. And nothing's happened yet, but you'll get to the point where suddenly coins will be worthless. I've seen this happen in various countries. Suddenly you're like, nobody even uses coins anymore because they're worthless. They're not, or let's say they're not worth dealing with, right? And suddenly, bank accounts can be seized. They can just knock a zero off your bank account. You got $10,000 in the bank today, and tomorrow it's $1,000. And furthermore, that money is not. I believe our monetary supply our money supply, I believe, has gone up about 35% in the last year. I read that recently. I don't know if that's exactly true, but I think that's directionally accurate. I mean, you don't have to be you don't have to be an economist to know something's going to happen. You don't have to be an army general to look at this border and see that it's wide open, right? I didn't have to be an army general to be far ahead of the game on Iraq and Afghanistan and Hong Kong than most of the military experts, right? And this is by going there and physically seeing it and studying. If you look now at the food prices, you can see they're going up, they're going up, they're going up, and our monetary supply continues to go up. It's going to collapse. Again, you don't need to have been to Harvard to study economics to see this. You need to have been around the world like I have, more than half my life in other countries, more than 80 countries. I've seen this unfold over and over. It's coming. I can smell it.
Mike, unfortunately, we can all see it. The reality is, look, I'm an optimist. Most guys who've been in the service, who've seen combat, have to kind of be optimists at the end of the day, but we're realists too. And I got to tell you, they were planning on bringing 1.2 million possibly, so they could turn around and execute the same game plan that they did a couple of years ago, but they're really past that number already. Unfortunately, I think, this fire burns both ways. It doesn't just burn one way. And look, some people have a death wish. You want to kill this country? God bless you. At the end of the day, it's going to turn around and it's going to bite you too. So you're killing yourself. But like you said, how does an emergency work? You're going to make sure that current government looks bad and then turn around and try to replace it with something. It's all about control at the end of the day, folks. It's about control. These people have to control you. That's the only thing they know what to do, and they will do it however way they can. And unfortunately, if you have individuals, who are compromised from day one, the guy who breaks the law to come into the country is compromised, period. So if you already taught him the laws of the land don't mean nothing, it doesn't matter. He's the same guy who comes in here and steals cars out of the car lots now. They're stealing him. He's the same person who comes in and carjacks you, because he says, if the laws of the nation you're coming into, you have no respect for them. If you take off, even like you were showing, your clothes and you dump them on the ground and put new clothes on, and you just, the first thing you do, the first act you do in a country is basically defecate all over the country and on somebody else's private property, and you break the law, you have no respect for it. So congratulations, you made it over here. Right. Let's see if you can last a decade. Let's see if you're going to pick up a gun and go defend this flag and say people shouldn't be doing what I did a few years ago. You're not going to do it. We have taught them that the U.S. don't respect the United States. You basically brought the U.S. down to every other nation's level. Congratulations. Maybe that's going to pay off for you. And unfortunately, a lot of these congressmen And Congresswoman, especially in my district, who sits here for years holding on to her congressional district with a chokehold, who basically tells her minions, do this, do that for me so I can stay in power. All their money is where? Is hidden overseas. And they're hoping that when this thing falls apart, they can maybe move off overseas and protect themselves. I got to tell you, Americans have a deep memory, the ones who love this country and the patriots. And if this thing falls apart and is absolutely destroyed, I guarantee you, they have a long reach even out of the grave, as they say, because they will find it and they will make sure that whoever destroyed this country will pay. And you got to go after the head of the snake. Unfortunately, you're going to destroy this thing across the board. It's almost like as they say, when initially a franchise was approved in the country for McDonald's, everybody started using that system. It's being used now everywhere. I was in Kenya, it was being used. I saw it being used in Sudan with the coup that took place. I've seen it being used everywhere else. And unfortunately, as you said, the Chinese have to feed billions of people 3 meals a day. And even they now are getting the blowback from the what they started anyway, from the virus issue that they thought that they were going to be able to use for their own, for their own requirements, but it boomeranged on them, and now they're paying for it. And you cannot have people who just only know how to control others through basically power and suppressing them to be able to lead nations into the next decade. It just doesn't work, and it always leads at the end of the day to people finally lashing back. And I'll tell you, when that happens, everybody pays. Everybody pays. Mike, I'm going to give the last word.
Everybody.
I know it's always a pleasure to have you here. I know it's guys like you on the ground doing what you do, yeoman's job, to be able to get the word to us. People want to help you, Mike. How can they help you? Please let us know, because I know it's expensive for you to do all these operations in support of our nation.
It is expensive. In fact, since 2005, I believe I started this independent war correspondent stuff by putting up a PayPal link in 2005. I had been out in Iraq for 6 or 8 months, a lot of combat. And finally, I'm like, I can't afford to do this anymore because I'm paying for it out of my pocket because I didn't want to work for it. The reason I was over there is because I didn't trust the media, right? This mistrust and distrust of the media is nothing new. And so I didn't trust what they were reporting in Iraq. And so I went over to Iraq and told what I was seeing. And that picked up millions of readers actually very quickly. And finally I was like, I have to do something. And I put up a PayPal button and I started being able to fund it. Then I went over and did the same in Afghanistan and so many other countries. So that's the way I do it. People support me to keep me on the field. And luckily, most of the support are small checks, like $100, $200, $10, $5, and that sort of thing. And that way, nobody actually owns me. Nobody can say, well, I'll just cut you off, And because, often people say, oh, I don't like what you wrote about the border, or you made that cop look bad, or something like that. I'm not anti-cop or whatever. But when it's many small donations, then nobody holds the spigot to actually cut you off, which, is untrue of all the big media. They have huge advertisers and other funders that are unknown to us, and some of them are clearly quite large. So that's how I do it. I've been doing it on locals.com, and I'm restarting my website again soon, and it'll be under my name, Michael Yon.
No, it's I highly encourage everybody, you get a chance, please donate to Mike's operations. Basically, what he's doing is providing what we need, the tools to be able to understand what's happening in our own country. I will tell you one thing, Mike, before I leave you. I gave a talk just yesterday on Veterans Day celebration for a luncheon that we had. And unfortunately, we found out that after the fall of Afghanistan, that the veteran numbers of suicides went up from 20 to 22 to now 60 plus a day. 60 plus a day that were committing suicide. 60 plus. That was the number that the chaplain briefed us from the 4th district. He said the number has been given to them. It's 60 plus. And I have to tell you, for the veterans
I had
that are
no
out
idea.
there, if you're listening, For the veterans that are out there listening, listen to me. We need you guys in the fight, buddy, because this country will need your support. Please, yeah, pick up the phone, call your friends if you can. We need you. We need you to stay in this fight because,
Need you on
unfortunately,
point.
yeah, I mean, we kind of have to have you on point. If this thing's not over, it finally made it to our shores. Unfortunately, the people who pumped out the doors were living in your family. So they did it for themselves. You know, you cannot get people to love a nation. You cannot teach them the things that a soldier sometimes you can't even teach, which is about just having that switch inside the duty to protect, the family members, to the honor, the discipline, and unfortunately we raise a generation of individuals who don't care, and they sold out their own nation for what? Power, not even on money, but just for power, just so somebody can look at them and say, you know what, you're the guy, stroke their back. We can't go after the head of the snake, which sits in China, because most of the folks here are compromised. Most of our social media, basically. Look, even take a look at Facebook right now, Facebook, and how we get suppressed on Facebook. Facebook itself is trying to come up with this meta universe concept. Well, it has a lot of issues on the back door, but it's not telling people that it doesn't have the capability of making a functioning possibility in the future. You know why he's doing it, is pushing it so far? Because China is telling you got to push it far. Because China wants to be able to have access to the control of the internet across the globe through our legislative processes, so they can go ahead and squeeze us the way they want in order to be able to use future technology requirements when it comes to hologram technology that it wants to be able to control our communication means. So, what does Facebook do? Facebook tries to introduce something that it knows it hasn't fixed all the issues with it on the backside of it. And in the process, what happens to us, programs like ours gets, suppressed. We constantly, every time you go on live stream, we always get screwed with as far as our capabilities of being able to get out there and get the word out to everybody. It is what it is. We'll deal with it as it is, as need be. And I know that I'm going to stay in the fight until, the day I'm done, and that's only going to happen when they put me in a grave, if we get to that,
That's right.
to that point. But until then, we'll keep in the fight. Mike, give you the last word. I'm sorry, buddy. I know I kind of went off off tangent there for a second, but I think it was important to kind of put in how information operation works to close out everything. So I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I forgot Facebook even exists. I've still got an account up there, but I don't actually go on there maybe once a week. I used to go on there daily and publish stuff. But after I reached almost 700,000 viewers in 2014, they won't let it grow anymore. Same with Twitter. Like, I think I've gotten 54,000. They just don't let it grow. It just doesn't go anywhere for years, right? Because there are people like us that are saying that women should not be in the Ranger Regiment and should not be Navy SEALs and Green Berets. We are not welcome. We are considered something inferior and stupid or whatever. But the bottom line is that's fine. I was actually happy that Facebook started cutting me down, because now I'm like, wow, I was wasting time on Facebook. I need to, publish in other places which have more bang for the buck. And so, I mean, there are uses for Facebook and Twitter and all that, and my feeds still go out there. But in reality, you're much better off with your own website. Much better. I use Locals and Patreon, but I started going away from Patreon because they're so left-wing radicals. And I'm like, you're not going to hold me hostage. So I've distributed. Of course, the banks will hit us eventually, as they've already hit some other people. Bannon, of course, got arrested today. He's messaged me a few times. He's a warrior. And it's actually good that they arrested him, because it's just giving him more of a perch to fight them from. They're giving him, it's actually a strategic error to go after somebody like Bannon, because it just brings more attention to it. It brings people more on his side. some people be naturally against him. But a lot of people are now, like, I got flooded with messages today, like, I'm going to support Bannon. I'd forgotten to watch his show, but now I'm watching it again. That sort of thing.
Mike, we'll have you back on again, brother. Much appreciated. I know we talked for a while, and we'll have you back on again. With that said, guys and gals, God bless the United States and these new paradigms.
So you got a crew coming up now.
Hey, so the BP guy just told me, I'm not familiar with this area, but he just told me that this is all private property and it's not public property again until you're on the right of way of the road. So y'all gonna have to leave.
So basically we got Border Patrol and DPS doing chaperone activities, asking us not to film them when they come in so they can change clothes in private. So that's what we're down to. We're down to actually Texas and Border Patrol playing chaperones. I'm gonna go down this way. So here they are crossing right here. So are these guys crossing, or are they coyotes? What are these guys? Are these guys crossing? Are they coyotes or what?
Yeah, so when I see the road, like the actual paved road is
Who owns this property?
I'm not sure. The BP supervisor down there told me that it was private property.
Okay. Why are y'all chaperoning these guys? I mean, like, we shouldn't take photos while they're changing clothes. I mean, we're just welcoming them to America.
Would you want someone filming your wife changing clothes?
I wouldn't want somebody sneaking into my country. And the law enforcement acting as a chaperone.
Just asking you to give them some decency when they change clothes.
It's decency they're sneaking into our country.
Okay. Well, I would prefer y'all to go back to the roadway since this is private property. I have no idea if y'all are good. What is it? Tell who is it? Yeah, that's it. Can y'all at least back up? I'm trying to be reasonable. We can get Eagle Pass PD down here and y'all can be removed from the area.
We understand. We understand. I've been tracking them all over the world. Okay. I've been tracking them down in Panama and Mexico.
This is not giving us some space.
I understand.
This is back up at least to where your buddy is.
All right.
I
mean, do you know these children are their children?
Can you walk back there to where your buddy is, or I'll have Eagle Pass come down?
All right. Do you know these are their children? So we got U.S. law enforcement, Texas law enforcement, basically acting as chaperone, give them some space so they can change clothes. Can't make up this stuff. Biden's only part of the problem.